Okay, so welcome everybody to Fueling Your Lung Runs Right. I'm Helen, and maybe this is the first time that we've met. I think pretty much all of you have found this little workshop this evening through London Marathon Training and Support Facebook group. And it was all a little bit last minute, me setting this workshop up this evening. And the reason I set it up was because over the weekend, and really sort of Sunday, Monday, my message box was bombarded with lots of people who were asking me for advice about fueling long runs. And there were quite a few posts in that Facebook group with people who still had questions and queries, still questioning whether or not they'd got their fueling strategy right, still with lots of questions outstanding, and still a lot of confusion out there. So I thought, rather than just keep answering the same question time and time again in the Facebook group, I thought, let me set up this little workshop this evening, can take you through the theory behind fueling long runs, and then we can talk a little bit about some fueling options that you might want to try. Now, running London, we've got 5 and a bit weeks left. So there's not that many long runs left in your training plan. And in fact, my longest run is going to be on the 7th of April. I was in a workshop a couple of days ago, and I said the 7th of March, and everyone burst out laughing. So the 7th of April. So that gives me a 3-week taper period. And through that taper period, I'm going to be reducing my long runs. So we really don't have many big long runs left to be doing in our training plan. So it's really critical at this stage of training that we are making sure that we have got our fueling strategy, locked down and loaded, and we know exactly what we're going to be doing on our long runs and on race day itself. Okay, so thank you for joining me this evening, and I'm hopefully will give you some last minute tips to make sure that you have got your fueling strategy down to a T. You know exactly what you're going to be doing, and you can test it out in the long runs that you're going to be doing next weekend. Okay, I'm going to be sharing my screen. So fingers crossed, tech works. Sometimes we have tech issues, but I hope it's all working well. Okay, so welcome to Fueling Your Long Runs Right. If we haven't met before, I'm Helen, and I am a multiple marathoner, and London Marathon this year is going to be my 11th marathon. So that sounds like I'm pretty serious, but I'm not really. I've been running pretty much since about 2012, so that's not that long ago. I did the marathon. My first marathon was in 2005, and it was a disaster. And I didn't really do much running for a good few years after that. But 2012, I was really unfit, pretty flabby, and I decided I needed a change. So I started back in 2012 and made the decision that I was going to start running, getting my life back on track, and getting my diet, my nutrition under control, what I was eating, because it was a disaster. And I've been really running ever since. And since then, I've ran my 11 marathons or 10 marathons. And when I started out running marathons, you know what? I knew absolutely nothing. I probably thought I knew everything. And, the first couple of races I did, I've made every mistake in the book. But I've learned from my mistakes. I've learned what works and what you need to do to have, successful training and to have a fabulous race day. So I'm now a nutrition coach. So I used to be a business consultant, and I'd be running all over the world. But I'm now a nutrition coach, and I work with runners just like you guys, and help people get their diet right to support their training. So very often I'm working with a lot of people to make sure you get their fueling right. and to make sure they're eating the right foods, to make sure that they're they're training well, and not putting on any weight through marathon training, which can happen. So today what we are going to be doing is looking at how we fuel our long runs. So I'm hoping that what I'm going to be doing is to answer a lot of the questions that were coming up over the last couple of days in our Facebook group, and people messaging me about how you need to be deciding on your fueling strategy for your marathon and your long runs. So what are we going to cover this evening? First up, we're going to look at how you fuel your long runs, okay? We're going to be talking about what you should be eating before you go running, okay? So I'm going to talk about the fuel as a little bit of background to start with. And then we're going to talk about what you should be eating before, because that has a big impact on the amount of energy that you've got in your body, and that will have a big impact on how well you do your long runs, okay, and how well you're going to be doing the run, running your marathon. And we're also then going to be talking about eating and drinking on the run. And it really is, that's the part of the topic that most people are asking me about. But all three are really, really important to understand, so that you can get it right, so that you can not hit the wall in your training. And so you can, try and avoid, needing the portaloos or the bushes on your runs. So we want to make sure that you have the best advice, so you can choose what you need to be doing to energize and fuel your long runs. Okay, so first up, I'm going to be talking about how you fuel your running, as I think that really helps explain what you need to be eating and drinking to support your running. Okay, so to fuel your marathon, your body is going to be using a lot of your body's body fat, okay? And fat, when we're running marathons, we're running quite slowly, and we're looking to get into what a lot of PTs will call the fat burning zone, okay? And that's one of the reasons why everyone will tell you that you need to be running your long runs quite slowly, because when you run slowly, that's when you tip the energy balance into to be burning more fat for fuel. So when we're running our marathon, we're looking to burn body fat to help fuel our marathon, to help fuel our running. But to burn the fat for fuel, your body needs carbohydrates, okay? And it's rather like a candle. So if you think about a candle, you've got the wick and the wax. So if you imagine that your fat is like the wax, but you need the wick, which would be the carbohydrates, in order to keep your candle burning. So when you're running your marathon and when you're out on your long runs, you need to have both fat and carbohydrates to provide you with the energy that's going to power your running, okay? Now, you and I have got almost infinite supply of body fat that our body can draw upon as fuel for our running, okay? We don't need to be eating fat. We don't need additional fat in our diets to help us, to give us energy to burn that fat for fuel, okay? Now, even people like Mo Farah, even the skinny Kenyans, they have enough body fat in them that can power through, a good few marathons. I think I saw a statistic that it was about 40. So if they've got enough body fat to power through 40 marathons, you and I, guys, we've got enough body fat to power, a lot of marathons, okay? So we don't need to be taking on board fat for fuel. So we also need carbohydrates to burn. So we need the carbs to help us, our body burn the fat, okay? And unfortunately, whilst our bodies store carbohydrates, and carbs are stored in our muscles, and it's stored in our livers, we've only got enough capacity to store carbs to fuel about 90 minutes worth of running, okay? And after that, unless you eat more carbs, you're going to hit the wall. And I don't know about you, but I have experienced hitting the wall, and it's not great. You kind of feel you just can't go on. Your brain starts going. It doesn't want to run, basically. So in order for us to keep going beyond that 90 minutes worth of running, whether it's on your long run or on race day, what we need to be doing is making sure that firstly our body is well stocked with carbohydrates before we head out on our runs. So we need to make sure that our bodies are stocked full beforehand. And then we also need to make sure that we're eating carbs whilst we're out on our long runs, okay? Now, a lot of people, I have seen posts where people are saying, oh, I've had a protein shake before my long run, or a protein bar. Now, protein isn't primarily used for fuel in your running, okay? Now, when you hit the wall, what happens is your body starts breaking down muscle to form carbohydrates. So it actually burns protein that way. But generally, if you eat protein, so whether it's a protein shake or it's a steak or some eggs or something, your body is not using that protein to burn as for fuel to fuel your running, okay? And what actually happens is protein is really quite hard to digest. And if you eat protein too soon before you go out running, what you actually are going to be finding is that it might sit in your stomach and make your stomach feel a little bit uncomfortable, okay? So what we need to be doing is focusing in on the carbohydrates. Okay, so what should you be eating before you go out running, okay? So what we need to be doing is we need to make sure before we're heading out on our long runs and before we're running our marathons, we need to make sure that our carbohydrate stores are full, okay? And really what I'm talking about here is fueling long runs. Mid-reach runs, when you're going out for, maybe 30 minutes, an hour, maybe a little bit longer, you don't really need to be loading up on carbs for those sorts of runs. But for your long runs, and especially practicing your long runs that are practiced for your marathon, you do need to make sure that your carb stores are full before you go out on your long run. Okay, so what do we need to be doing? So first up, the night before you go out on your long run, you need to be eating a carbohydrate-rich meal. So what do I mean by that? Well, something that's based around, maybe potato, pasta, rice, other sorts of whole grains. So I always recommend that the night before your long run, that you make sure that you're eating a carb-rich meal. I also recommend the day before your marathon, you need to go easy on spicy and high fiber food. And this is really, really important if you're the sort of person who gets gut problems. And I know there are a lot of people in our Facebook group who have gut problems. I've seen all the posts. There are a lot of people who are, thinking about taking Imodium when they're out running, or they're complaining of stomach cramps and things. Before you blame your running stomach issues on gels or the runs itself, take a look at what you've been eating the day before. Because what I always say to people I work with is, what goes in one end has got to come out the other end. So make sure that the day before that you're going on your long run, you're not eating spicy food and you're not eating high fiber food. So the day before your long run is probably a day where you probably should go easy on the whole grains and fruit and veg. Okay, so you're not getting too much fiber into your gut that, you know, pretty much wants to come out when you're on your run, because when you're running you jiggle everything up a bit, and it also sort of jiggles things up in your gut, and things move faster through your gut, which is why, you know, we're all heading for the Portaloos or into Tesco's toilets halfway around our long runs. Okay, so if you are someone who's been caught short, and you've had to go and find a pub or whatever, and you're thinking of taking Imodium, first up, take a look at what you've been eating before you go out on the run, and it really needs to be thinking about what you're doing the day before. Okay, so that was the day before. Then the morning of your long run, you should also be eating a carbohydrate-focused breakfast or snack. So that's whether or not you're doing something like a morning run or an afternoon run. Now, because we're focusing on training for our marathon, I do recommend, you know, now we're getting into the nuts and bolts part of training, that you try and do the next few training runs in the morning, so they kind of replicate race day. So it's always a good idea, you know, we always say don't try anything new on race day. So over the next few weeks, as well as practicing, you know, what running feels like, and getting out there and getting the miles in your legs, and testing out your on the run fueling strategy, you also need to be testing out what you need to be eating the day before, and thinking about what you're going to be eating the day before your marathon and the morning of your marathon. So you should be using your long runs as a practice for what you're going to be doing on race day. So have a think about what you're going to be eating on the morning of race day. And I recommend that you go for something like a carbohydrate focused breakfast or snack. So that could be something like, you know, porridge or a bagel or some toast, anything along those sorts of lines. Again, I would steer clear of high protein foods at breakfast, because especially if you're going out on a morning run, because protein takes a long time to be digested and to clear from your stomach, and you really don't want that in terms of stomach issues. So recommend that you focus in on a carbohydrate focused breakfast or snack. Okay, so now we've got your carbohydrate stores full from the night before. We need to be thinking about what you need to be doing on the long run and marathon day itself. So how are you going to be fueling your long run? What are the options? And how much should you be eating? How often? And all of those good questions. So first up, you need to find a food or a fuel that's right for you, and it needs to be high in carbohydrates. And it's recommended that you need to eat about 30 grams of carbs every 30 to 60 minutes, okay? And you need to be practicing now what you're going to be using on race day. So I think most of you are here because you haven't quite decided on, you know, what is your best option. What are the best fuels that you could be using for race day? Maybe you've had problems with gels. Maybe they just are not for you. You don't like them. They're too gloopy. They sit in your stomach, and you want some other options. So we're going to go through some other options in a second, and I'll talk about how is the best way of eating things like gels and eating all the other sorts of fuels that you should be taking. But everybody's gut is different. Okay, I personally, I'm a gel lady. I don't mind the gloopiness of gels. I use cis gels, and I don't find them too sweet. Some other gels I've tried in the past. I think I've got a whole repertoire of gels. I've tried most of them, so I've got an opinion on most different brands, and I've settled with cis. Personally, I could not be eating real food. So to me, the idea of eating sandwiches, flapjack type bars or bananas, to me, that turns my stomach. But I know a lot of you are going, God, I couldn't eat gels. I want to go for real food, okay? As long as it's carbohydrate based and it's easy to digest, that is absolutely fine. You need to find foods and fuels that are right for you, okay? Right. So what else? Drinking on long runs and the marathon. We also need to be thinking about drinking, okay? Now, I know that when we kicked off this Facebook group months ago, or people started to join because they just got places, I do remember reading quite a lot of posts of people going, oh my goodness, I've never drank running. How can I do it? Oh, I don't need to drink. And it's like, you absolutely do. Running a marathon, you need to get into the habit of being able to drink and feeling what that feels like whilst you're running. And the reason we need to drink is because we're sweating, okay? Even on freezing cold days, and you know, it's beginning to warm up now, but last weekend was a bit of a killer in terms of wind. It was a little bit nippy. I went out and I did 18 miles, and I came back and I was drenched in sweat. My clothes were drenched, and that tells me that I've lost a lot of fluids along the way. So we need to make sure that you're drinking water whilst you're running in your marathon. You also lose salts when you're sweating, okay? And you can tell some people lose a lot of salt and other people lose less salt, and you can tell whether you're a heavy sweater and you lose lots of salts by, you'll see white marks on your clothing. If you're the sort of person who gets white marks on their clothing after you've been running, then that's telling me, or that's telling you, that you're losing a lot of salts whilst you're running, and you need to make sure that you're replenishing those salts out on your runs, and especially on race day. Okay. So how much should you be drinking when you're out running? It's recommended that you drink to thirst, okay? So, a lot of people are saying, well, how much should I be drinking? You don't need to be gulping down water at every single water station. You just need to make sure that you're taking small sips throughout the run, okay? And a lot of people say to me that they don't, when they drink, it feels like there's a little big sloshy feeling in their stomach. And that is often, if you've drunk too much, you could end up with a sloshy feeling in your stomach. So once again, just drink to thirst and take small sips whilst you're running. So what sorts of foods and fuels do I suggest that you try out? We could things like sports drinks, gels, energy bars, energy chews. You could do some real foods like bananas or dried fruits, sandwiches and cereal bars. And I'm now going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm just going to talk about some of these things as to how many carbs are in them, and therefore, how often you probably need to be taking, and some of the pros and cons of some of the different options. Okay, righty-ho. So first up, I'm just going to take you through gels. So As I say, I'm a gel user. I started off, my first marathon was London, and the first gel I used was the Lucozade Sport Gel that is at London Marathon. Unfortunately, you can only buy Lucozade Sport gels from the Lucozade Sport website, but I do know a lot of people have messaged them and they've got a few free samples. So if you want to try the Lucozade Sports gels, by all means, buy a box from the website. So I haven't got any here, just to sort of show you what the packet looks like. I probably use them. But in my opinion, the Lucozade Sports gels, they're quite thick and gloopy, and they are quite sweet. In fact, they're very sweet, okay? So if you're not into sweet things and you don't like gloopy, maybe they're not going to be for you. And again, you really need to test it out before race day. What other gels have I tried? I haven't got it here, but High Five. So if you don't like thick and gloopy, take a look at High Five. High Five gels I found very, very thin. And in fact, when I opened the packet, sometimes they take a while to get the end off. It was so liquid, and I wasn't expecting it. It just kind of went everywhere. But if you don't like gloopy, High Five might be a gel that's worth looking at. They come in lots and lots of different flavors. High Five tend to be more of citrus type flavors. If you go into a sports shop or go online, you'll see what types of flavors that they've got. I'm going to talk about gloopiness, and then I'll talk about carbs. What else have I got here? I've got Goo. Goo is another popular choice of sports gels, and this one here is salted caramel. Oh my God, I used this, it was a few weeks ago now, and I can honestly say this does taste like salted caramel. It's the sort of taste that you'd want to have it on a banana or something. So if you like those sorts of sweet types of flavors, then Goo do a lot of those sorts of flavors. It wasn't for me. I didn't really get on with it, but it's a good gel. Okay, the thing about Goo is, again, this is another thick, gloopy gel. So if gloop isn't your thing, thickness isn't your thing, maybe Goo isn't the right gel for you. But again, they do lots of interesting flavors, a lot of the sweet flavors. Do you know what? You can get flavored gels, any flavor under the world. I think there's even, tequila gels and flavored gels and gin and tonic flavored gels. I don't know who's made them, but I've definitely seen them online. Okay, what else have I got? I have got Cis gels. Okay, and I'm going to talk about this one first. So these are the ones I use, and they, in terms of gloop, they're not as gloopy as Goo and Lucozade Sports, but they are more gloopy than High Five. Okay, and Cis do various flavors, various ranges. They do all the citrus type ones. This is a raspberry gel too. Okay, so what's in gels? So gels all contain carbohydrates, okay? And they'll have different types of carbs depending on the manufacturer of the gel. I'm not going to go into the detail as to is it maltodextrin and what that does, because it's too much information, folks. You just want to know the basics. So they've got carbs, and we need carbs for our running, okay? And if you look on the back of your packet of gels, all of these I've got here, they all contain 22 grams of carbohydrate, okay? And that is enough carbs for about 45 minutes of running. So actually on the CIS website, when you look up information, they do say, it take every 45 minutes, okay? So yeah, that kind of works in terms of the amount of carbs that you've got in them. You'll also find that a lot of them contain electrolytes, okay? So this one here, this raspberry one says containing electrolytes. I think Goo, that contains electrolytes too. And electrolytes is just a fancy sciencey word for salts, okay? So you remember I said about sweating that you lose salts. If you take gels like these, you get the electrolytes that's going to help you replenish the salts. So that's all good. And I'm going to show you this gel here. Actually, no, that's got a little wet. And this is a double espresso gel. Oh my God. And it's got caffeine. So this is a caffeine gel. And you will find some gels, this goo gel has got a little amount of caffeine in it. But this one is a real hit, okay? And the reason a lot of gels have got caffeine in it is caffeine works on your brain to tell your brain that everything is good with the world and that your body can keep moving, okay? That's pretty much what happens. This one here tastes like an espresso. It is nowhere near sweet. It really does taste like double espresso. And it's also got, you know, the carbohydrates, and actually it's the carbohydrates that are fueling your running, and the caffeine in it is just working on your brain to tell your brain that it's okay for you to keep running, okay? So that's why some gels you'll see have got caffeine in them. Right, so how should you take your gels? So I recommend you take gels every 30 to 60 minutes, okay? So I take them every 45 minutes, and you should start after 45 minutes of running. So don't wait for any of your fuels. Don't wait to start eating things until you're feeling a little bit low in energy. That's too late. You need to start eating, a bit like a picnic, after about, you know, half an hour, 40 minutes. You won't feel you need any energy, but it takes a long time for all your food to be digested, to get from your stomach down to your legs, okay? So that's my first piece of advice in terms of gels. You also need to make sure when you take your gels that you take them with water, okay? And the reason being is, firstly, it helps dissolve the carbohydrates. So when the carbohydrates dissolved, it helps to then get absorbed into your bloodstream, gets to your legs a lot quicker. And also, as you get further into your runs, digestion becomes harder, okay? And especially when you start getting tired, what happens is the blood starts moving away from your gut down to your legs, okay? Because it's more worried about getting oxygen to your legs and taking away waste products from your body, okay? So your blood gets diverted from your gut, and it takes longer for all the carbohydrate that you're eating, whether it's from gels or jelly babies or bananas. We'll talk about real food in a minute. So later on in the run, that's why a lot of people at the back end of their runs go, oh my God, I got gut problems. Oh, these gels, oh no. And then they start throwing up and all this, that, and the other. And the reason being is, one of the reasons is the carbohydrate you've eaten just gets sitting in your stomach. And that kind of irritates it. And because it takes a long time to absorb into your bloodstream, okay? And so it's really important that you are drinking water along with the food, because that then helps the digestion process. So if you are someone who suffers with their gut, make sure that you're drinking water with whatever food, whatever fuel you're taking on board, because you know, you very often don't feel it at the beginning. It's at the end when your body's tired and when blood is just not around your gut. So it takes a lot longer. Okay, so try that out. It should go some way to really help any of that discomfort that you've got in your stomach and in your bowels later on through the race. Okay, so that's me talking about gels. I'm not going to talk any more about gels because I know everyone's bored of gels. What else have I got here? I've got a whole load of things. Jelly babies. And I'm just going to put these up in front of you. You can also buy sports beans, shot blocks, things like that. They're pretty much jelly type sweets. But, you know, a lot of us go, oh, jelly babies. When I talk about jelly babies, I'm talking about anything that's made by Haribo, you know, anything that's a sugar sweet, okay? I got that. Where did I get that? Oh, I think I bought some Cis gels and they sent me some Haribo. There we go. I'm not a sweetie person, so I keep them here. Right, jelly babies. Let me talk to you about jelly babies. So a lot of people use jelly babies or jelly sweets or Percy Pigs. Percy Pigs are vegan, apparently. So if you are vegan, you can use Percy Pigs. Or you use shot blocks or things like that. Now, I'm going to talk jelly babies. So on the back of the packet here, there is nutrition information. And this nutrition information tells me that 4 sweets is the equivalent of 26 grams of carbohydrate. Okay? No, 21 grams of carbohydrate. So these are 22 grams. 4 sweets of these is equivalent to a gel. So that means every 45 minutes, you need to be eating 4 jelly babies, folks. Okay? Doesn't matter if you eat the head first or the legs first. 4 every 45 minutes, or let's say 6 jelly babies need to be digested every single hour. Okay, so that's what you need to be doing if you're going down the jelly baby route. Take a look if you're using any sort of other form of Haribo sweets, you know, jelly sweets, Percy Pigs or whatever. Have a look at the back of the packet. Yeah, even this little tiny packet of Haribo has got nutrition information on it. So have a look, see how much carbohydrate is in your product, and what you need to be doing is it's around about 20 odd grams every 45 minutes. Okay, so you then work out how many of those things you need to be chewing. Same with things like shot blocks, sports beans. Now the sporty versions of these, they have often got electrolytes in them. So they've got the salts, they're rather like gels, only they're in a jelly baby form or a sweetie form. So a lot of people who don't like gels go for the sweets, okay? But they're doing exactly the same thing. They're providing you with an instant source of carbohydrate. And again, you need to take water, because if you don't, that carbs, even though it's come from real food, not gels, is just going to sit there, okay? So make sure you're drinking water, and you get into the habit of always drinking water when you're taking on board your fuel, and fingers crossed, you're not going to be chucking up around about mile 20. Now, there's a couple of issues with things like jelly babies and shot blocks and things, is carrying them. So if you are going down that route, you need to work out how you're going to carry the things. So you're going to need to work out how many jelly babies, how many blocks, and how many sports beans or whatever you're going to be needing through the course of your marathon. And you need to be able to get hold of them quickly. So there's no point in having the rucksack if you're going to have to take the rucksack off, okay? The other thing is chewing. I've worked with a couple of people, and I've just had a conversation with one of my clients who was using, she was using jelly sweets, and she got fed up of chewing them. So again, you need to be thinking, you know, do you want to be chewing Haribo for 6 hours? Because there's a lot of chewing involved to get those carbs, you know, pretty much eaten, okay? So, but if you're a sweetie person and you have a sweet tooth and you love it, that might be the option for you. Bananas. Okay, so bananas are another great source of carbohydrate. And actually, bananas could be one of, you know, it's one of the runner's best friends. Runners have got great amounts of carbohydrate in them, and they also have got good quantities of potassium. And potassium is one of those salts that you lose through sweating. So, do you know what? It's got our own electrolytes in it. So, you know, it's pretty good. Banana is a great option. And when I look up the nutrition information of a banana, what it tells me is you probably need to be eating 1 banana every hour, running on your long runs or running your marathon, okay? personally, bananas is about the only real food that I can eat before I've been running. So I think if I went out and fueled with bananas on my marathon, I might be okay. My gut digests bananas okay. Although I did have a banana before I went on doing some threshold runs today, and it was a bit, but I was okay. So bananas are another great source, and I do know it's one lady I'm working with who uses bananas to fuel her marathons. But the problem with bananas, they're quite heavy. So if you're thinking about taking bananas with you on London to use bananas for race day, you're pretty much going to need a bunch of them. Which actually is reasonably heavy, and then you've got to think about how you're going to carry them, okay? But bananas are a great option. Now, the lady I was talking about, she ran London last year, and she had various family members as strategic points along the route, and they were all primed with her bananas, and so she knew where they were going to be, and she'd arranged that they were at the right spot about an hour. And so she picked up her bananas in a little bit. She had a little bit of a banana relay. But, that's the biggest problem about bananas, is carrying them. And also, if you are thinking about taking, a bunch of bananas with you to have as a picnic, they do bruise quite easily. So, if bashed bananas are not your thing and you're more of a green banana type person, that might not be the best thing for you to go for. What else have I got here? I haven't got any sandwiches and I haven't got any flapjacks. But what I do have, I've got some apricots. Ta-da! So a lot of people do go down the dried fruit route. So again, like dried fruit, it's a little bit like having sweeties. You've got to work out how you're going to take them, okay? And you're going to need a similar amount of, these are apricots, you're going to need a similar amount of apricots to what you've got in your jelly babies. So I think it says a 30-gram serving, which I think is probably about 6. You probably need about six per hour if you were going down the dried fruit route. So those are some suggestions that I've got about that you could be using to fuel your long run. You do need to make sure that whatever you're taking, there's another one, sports drinks. So London, they give out Lucozade Sport. Again, you could be fueling your marathon or part of your race using Lucozade Sports drink. It is this is widely available. You can buy it in pretty much every supermarket these days. I find it very, very sweet. So I wouldn't want to be drinking it all the way through the marathon, but it is a great source of carbohydrates. So what's in Lucozade Sport? You get the fluid. So of course you do. It's a drink, but it's also got carbohydrates, and it's got electrolytes. So it's got your salts in it as well. So it's a great option for fueling your marathon. The downside I find is the sweetness of this drink, but it's a nice little top up. It's a nice variation. It's recommended, given the amount of sugar that's in the Lucozade Sport, that you'd have one of these every hour. Now that's quite a lot of liquid to get through in an hour. So these are 500 mils. So a 500 ml bottle gives you enough carbohydrates to fuel about an hour's worth of running, okay? So that's kind of another little downside of just using the sports drinks, is you've got to get through quite a lot of them to get the sort of recommended quantity of carbohydrates to fuel your running. But that's another option that you can do. And they are on the marathon, they give out Lucozade Sports. You will find the water stations, people just discard everything. They don't pick up a bottle and then run with it and use it. They have a sip and then just discard it. And as we're all slower runners, what you'll find is going through the water stations where they have Lucozade Sport, it's really sticky. Yeah, and you think, I don't need that. I don't, my trainers don't need to stick to the ground. I just need to be running. But they are reasonably frequently placed on the course, and you will get, I think if you look in the FAQs on the London Marathon website, they will tell you at what mile markers you can get Lucozade Sport. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. So, talked about sports drinks. Oh, isotonic. What does isotonic mean? People ask about that. Isotonic, so the Lucozade sports drink is an isotonic drink. That just means you don't need to drink water with it, okay? Of course. You will also see some of the energy gels will say isotonic on them. So in theory, they've been formulated so you shouldn't need to be drinking water with your gel. But I always recommend that you do drink water with your gel. It just helps with the digestion process, especially if you've got into the habit of doing it at the beginning of your runs, at the back end where your gut might be struggling a bit. If you're used to taking water with your gels, then that can only be a good thing, okay? So that's what isotonic means there. So you can, there are some other options there. You could use things like jam sandwiches. So I'd recommend, if you're going down a sandwich route, that you use white bread. So what you don't want to be including in fueling your marathons is anything that's too difficult to eat. So now's not the time for looking at wholemeal bread or anything like that. So if you're going on the sandwich route, think about white bread, jam. So we need something with a high glycemic index. And then you could also be using cereal bars. So a lot of the sports manufacturers make cereal bars that you can use to fuel your runs. Cliff bars are particularly good. You will find at Expo there'll be so many of these manufacturers, and they'll all be trying to sort of flog their cereal bar wares. But that's another great option if you get fed up of gels and sweets. They're not quite as sweet, but again, it takes a little bit more effort to eat things like cereal bars. And you can buy a lot of these sorts of things in running shops. And so test various things out if that's something that you might be interested in. Okay, I have no idea why that's suddenly gone all shit. How's that gone? Maybe I pressed something. Okay, so let's get honest. How has your marathon preparation been going? So I hope it's not, it's been going to plan, and you're well on the way with your training. So at the moment, we've just got there's 5 and a bit weeks left to marathon day, to race day. So we've only got a few more weeks left for our long runs before we start getting into taper. So just want to sort of talk a little bit about taper. So pretty soon you're going to be getting into taper, and taper is really, really, really important because taper allows your body to recover and repair, and it's really, really critical part of marathon training. It's almost as critical as getting your long runs in and getting the confidence that you can run the distance. You need to make sure through the final weeks of your training that you allow your body to recover and repair from all the exertions that you've been putting it under. And a lot of people get a little bit confused about taper, and I do have to admit, the first marathon I ran, I didn't understand taper, and I got it completely wrong. I was training right up until race day. In fact, I pretty much ignored the plan. I kept going. I was doing long runs. I was doing speed work. I was doing everything. I ignored my plan, and I paid the price. So you need to think about, are you going to be needing some help to understand, taper, and how you need to be thinking about your race week training and how your training plan starts to adapt, starts to change as once you've reached your peak mileage in a couple of weeks. And what about eating during race week? So we've talked about eating before your long runs. You also need to be thinking ahead about carb loading and what you're going to be doing race week. So do you need some help with carb loading with confidence? Because it's something that you absolutely need to get right, because you need to make sure that come race day that you've got the carbs in your body, so you've got the energy that you can run. And the other thing that you need to be thinking about as you start to prepare for your marathon is managing your mind, and getting some tips to manage your mindset, so you don't fear that final week, and you don't get panicked about paranoia and the final day before your marathon, that you're just sort of inert, that you just you get to the point where you go, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do it any longer. It's perfectly normal. But you can get some tips to help you manage those final few hours. Because what you need to do, we need to get you from being quite nervous and not really sure what you're supposed to be doing. Have you done enough training? It's always something people worry about. Worrying about taper. Am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? Have I eaten enough carbs? Have I eaten too much? Oh my God, I'm putting on weight. We need to make sure that you go from feeling really nervous and unsure to feeling that you're confident, and you're confident you can get going, and you can be a confident, what I call master marathoner. Now, next week, I am kicking off a series of workshops, and they're called Prepare to Run Your Marathon workshops. And they're there for first timers. So first-time marathoners, which I think most people are, to help you through the final weeks of your training and your preparation for your marathon. So make sure that when you get to race day, you're confident and that you know exactly what you're going to be doing, and you're confident that you can get there. You can have a good race and get to the finish line, with your race bling, and have a fabulous day. So in Prepare to Run Your Marathon workshops, I'm doing them as a group coaching program. We've got four topics that we're going to be covering over the course of 4 weeks. First up, we're going to be doing Tune Up Your Taper. So we're going to go through everything that you need to know about how to taper properly for your marathon, so you don't make the same stupid mistakes that I made in my first marathon. I got to my marathon, I started running, and by 10K I was exhausted, and I realized then something had gone pretty wrong, and I don't want you to feel that way. I had a terrible race. I was just too pig-headed. I didn't follow my plan. I didn't listen to advice. So in Tune Up Your Taper, I'm going to take you through exactly what you need to do and why through the final weeks of your training, and why it is so important. Week 2, we're going to be looking at carb loading with confidence. So I'm going to talk about race week and race week nutrition, okay? Because a lot of people get carb loading wrong. We all know we've got to load up on the carbs because we need the energy to run, but a lot of people start carb loading way too soon. A lot of people started at Christmas. Are you guilty of, just piling on the carbs all the time? So we're going to go through what you need to be doing, come up with a plan, come up with some meals that you could be eating through that final race week to make sure that you know exactly what you're going to be doing when it comes to race week in terms of your carb loading. Third week, we're going to be looking at getting your race day prep perfected, getting it right, because there are so many nervous people come race week. Paranoia really hits. Hasn't really hit the group just yet. There are a few nervous people, but I think we're just ebbing and flowing on nerves right now. But come race week, oh my God, unless you've got everything nailed down and planned, it's sleepless night syndrome, worrying about absolutely everything. So what I'm going to be doing on week 3 is make sure that you get all your prep and all your plans done, ready and prepared, so you don't have to stress about, those final 24 hours before race day, okay? We're also going to be talking about what to eat in the final day before your marathon, because race day, you kind of know where you're going to be. We've talked about fueling, we've talked about what you need to be eating at breakfast, blah, blah, blah. But I can tell you, the day before you race, you're going to be nervous, and a lot of people really struggle to eat when they're nervous. And so I'm going to give you lots and lots of tips and suggestions on what you could be eating on the Saturday, the day before race day. And if you're going to expo that day, you need to be organized, because you don't want to get in a sandwich queue at Pret and they've run out of carbs. So we're going to go through, give you some ideas how you need to go through those final 24 hours. And finally, week 4, I'm going to be talking about Eat Right for Recovery. Recovery starts the minute you cross the finish line. So what I'm going to be talking about is what you need to be doing in terms of eating after your marathon, that day and the days after, and also how best to start that recovery process after your marathon, so that you can get back to normality pretty quickly after your marathon, so that it doesn't take you a month before you actually feel like a normal person again. Okay, I've just done this. Tune up your taper, carb loads, prepare to race, eat right for recovery. Because what we need to do is get you ready to run your marathon, okay? Now, this coaching, we're starting next Wednesday, and I'm going to have two groups going. Got one group that's going to be going on Wednesday, and we're going to have coaching calls at 8 o'clock. Every Wednesday for 4 weeks. So we start next Wednesday. And I know midweek isn't great for everybody. So I'm also going to be doing another coaching group on Saturdays, on Saturday mornings, that is going to start a week on Saturday. So I think that's the 30th. And we're going to do that at 11 o'clock. So if you do park run, I do park run, you can be home and showered and come and join me to get prepared, get ready to race, okay? So that's what Prepare to Race coaching is all about. We're starting off next week. It's going to give you everything that you need to be doing in the final weeks in the lead up to your marathon, so you have an absolutely wonderful race day like I know you're going to have. If you're interested in joining me for Prepare to Race coaching, just send a reply to the email that you got with the link to this workshop, or message Cheesecake Runner. I'll get your message, then I can send you more information and how that's all going to work, guys. Okay, so we've gone through quite a lot this evening. Gosh, yes, an hour. I thought it was going to take half an hour. So I hope you found that really useful, and that I've given you some ideas on how you can be fueling your runs. So we've got gels, we've got bananas, we've got sports drinks, we've got Haribos and all sorts of other things there. So I hope that's been useful. Happy to answer any questions. If you drop me a message in the Facebook group, then I will get back to you. So once again, thank you very much, and I will see you all again soon. I've got to get off. I've got to have some dinner now. I've been non-stop all day. Okay, take care. Bye.